Hello, fellow pianists. My name is Jason Paul Peterson. I'm a professional pianist and founder of PetersonPianoAcademy.com. And in this video, I'm going to attempt to answer one of the questions I get most commonly as a piano teacher. Namely, why do I need to learn scales? What's so important about scales? Why do I need to invest the time in working on them? Now, every pianist goes through this ritual of learning major and minor scales, but I find that a lot of people have no idea why they're actually doing it. And I hope by the end of this video, you'll understand what it is that you're working toward, why these scales are so important. Now, I'm not going to talk in this video about the fingerings of the actual scales. If you're interested in that, visit PetersonPianoAcademy.com. You'll find all 24 major and minor scales exactly in the order you need to learn them, with the fingerings, with illuminated keys. Makes it a real cinch to review these scales as often as you want. So why do we learn scales? Well, the first thing you'll notice when you start to play piano music is that scales are everywhere. They are one of the building blocks of music. So if I start playing Mozart, sooner or later I'm bound to find a passage like this. And so on. If I'm playing Beethoven, same thing. I'll find a passage like this. The same goes for Chopin, for Schubert. Scales are everywhere. They are ubiquitous in piano music. Now, the reason we practice them, one of the reasons, is so that we don't have to learn the fingerings of the scales every time we come to one. When we have to run up and down the keyboard really fast, we don't want to be searching for a fingering. We don't want to be experimenting. What could I do here? Maybe if I put the third finger, the thumb under the third finger. We don't have time for any of that. So when I read a piece of music, something like I just played for you, the reason I can sight read a piece like that is because I already know the fingering for the scale. I've practiced it many times in the past. I don't have to work on it anymore. And so those notes just fly out. That fingering has become automated. If you didn't know the fingering for, in this case, the E flat major scale, when you get to that spot in the music, you're going to be stuck and you're going to have to work for quite a while to figure out what the best combination of fingers are in that spot. And it's completely unnecessary. You learn the scales in advance. You don't have to go through any of that. Now, another element to working on the scales, another reason why they're so important to learn, is that they allow us to really work on one of the crucial elements of piano playing, which is evenness. We have a hand with 5 fingers of very uneven strength. In playing the piano, we often want to play in a manner in which those notes just flow without really giving any hint as to which finger is playing them. We don't want the strong fingers to be accented and the weak ones to not be accented and so forth. We often want the notes to just flow in a very linear fashion. And that's why we practice with these scales, making all the notes sound very, very even, really working on the evenness. But that's not the only thing we can work on. We can work on speed, we can work on articulation, we can work on dynamics. The scales are really a great vehicle for practicing all sorts of basics of piano technique. So that's one of the things to keep in mind as well. So that's sort of the technical aspect of playing scales and why it's so important to learn them. There's another side, though, which is sort of the theoretical aspect of playing scales. This means essentially a scale. If we think about what a scale is, it's a particular collection of notes. We have 12 notes on the piano within an octave. From C to C, there are 12 different notes. In most of the scales, the major and minor scales, we have 7 out of those 12 notes which are being used. So if we're playing in the key, for example, of C major, we're using those notes, the white keys, 7 out of the 12 notes. Now, if you're playing in a more complicated key, say G flat major, it really, really helps when you're sight reading music to know the collection of notes that you're working with in most of the cases, apart from any sharps or flats that might be written in the music. So, whereas a lot of people have trouble playing in a key with a lot of sharps and flats, like G flat major or E flat major or F sharp, if you know those scales, it makes sight reading this music really, really easy. So when I'm playing something like Schubert in the key of G flat, I'm thinking about what are the notes of the G flat major scale? And I realize that as long as I don't have any sharps and flats in the piece, I'm just simply using the notes of that scale. That might sound kind of complicated right now, but essentially, it just allows us to understand what we're playing a whole lot faster. And so I encourage you from a theoretical point of view to work on those scales so that you understand the music that you're playing and the collection of notes that you're using. Now there's one other aspect of practicing the scales which is enormously helpful should you choose to go into the direction of jazz, pop, or any sort of improvised music, including classical improvisation. When you hear jazz pianists run up and down the scale playing tons of notes really, really fast at lightning speed, they're not thinking that quickly. They're simply grouping those notes together because they know that they're part of a scale that fits in that particular moment in the music. So, for example, just to give you a very simple example, if I'm playing an E-flat major chord and I want to improvise over that chord, I know that the notes of the E-flat major scale will, for the most part, sound good with that chord. So, here's the chord, here's the scale. As long as I use notes that belong to that scale, everything fits. So that's how jazz pianists think, that's how pop pianists think when they're improvising, when they're creating music, when they're composing music. All of those things are made so much more easier by an understanding of the scales. So those are a few of the main ways that practicing scales will help you on the piano. Believe me, there are good reasons why piano teachers all over the world suggest that their piano students learn these scales. And perhaps you know some reasons that I haven't thought of. If so, leave them in the comments. Let me know. I'd be interested to know what you found helpful about practicing the scales. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you again soon.